Коллеги, я прошу внимания, мы готовы начинать нашу сессию. Муслим Геланиевич, я думаю, вы можете начинать.
Dr. Tabulatov, please take the floor is yours. Are we going to see the screens and the participants on the screens? Okay.
Good morning, colleagues. I think we have a few more than that we can see in our list, but I guess it's just people watching. So good morning if it's morning for you. My name is Muslim Tabulatov. I'm advisor to the rector of the Far Eastern University. I oversee all climate and environmental projects within the university. We're here for the session called Progressive Solutions for Environmental Issues. It's a very important topic. I will read a short annotation of the session for those who don't know it. So it goes. As the world leaders assert their commitment to reduce global carbon emissions, the shift to renewable energy sources and preserving marine biodiversity becomes APEC University's unique opportunity to help foster sustainable livelihood and bring about a safer future by sharing their scientific expertise, elaborating joint projects with scientific institutions, private and governmental sectors. Carbon emissions, soil and ocean pollution, and obsolete energy sources that are damaging to the environment, although age-old challenges continue to negatively impact our environment daily and require new solutions and APEC economies cooperations to be tackled. I'd like to add that within Far Eastern University, we'll take this task very seriously. Yesterday, we created a Center for Climate and Environmental Projects. The goal for this center is to find promising projects, help them be developed and integrate them into real-life sector. Before we proceed, there are a few rules that we need to keep in mind. First, all speakers present their ideas and reports. The time limit is 12 minutes. So keep that in mind. If you go over, I will kindly stop you. Second, when you finish, we would like you to summarize the ideas and draw the recommendations for our joint document. All the questions for the speakers and discussions will start at the end, after all speakers are done. When we start discussion, please state your name, position, and institution, and so we get to know each other better. And first, I'd like to give a word to Professor Mikhail Ivanov. He's executive head of the cluster Technology and Protection of Nature from Bauman Moscow State Technical University. Thank you.
Thank you, Muslim. It's very kind for you to invite me to this session. I would like the organizers to set the presentation, please. Thank you very much. I would like to apologize in the beginning that the presentation will be, the text will be in Russian, but I will speak in English. Today we speak a lot about the climatic issues, and I would like to speak today about verification of reporting in climate projects. I believe that all of you in your countries face same issues, and you have similar tasks that have to be solved. And normally this issue relates to national regulation, and each such verification and validation body belongs to and corresponds to national regulations. However, it is crucial to develop international collaboration in this issue. And the bodies have to go worldwide. They have to develop international partnership and obtain accreditation, similar accreditation for to have the right for such actions in other world countries. So I would like to speak a little bit now about our expertise in this topic and share our opinion and maybe draw your attention to some opportunities that we provide here. And I will be very glad if we could set afterwards some specific and very tight collaboration in this area. And in the nearest future, a couple of following years, perform together climate projects in our countries and do validate and verify these projects. But so this is kind of introduction, so I will speak more. So in Russia, a strategy for low carbon development has been introduced by our president, which defines that we have to become carbon neutral by 2060. And for this, we have developed the strategy up to 2050, up to now, where we define regulation tools for government administrations, for companies and other bodies in their climate actions. This includes quotas or limits for emissions of greenhouse gases, and this includes carbon tax, a national carbon tax. For this, in the companies, yearly, companies have to report yearly their emission of greenhouse gases. For us now in Russia, each company which emits more than 150,000 tons of CO2 equivalent has to report to the government. And there is a set of companies which emit less, but they are also under, they don't have to report, but government controls them. And plus to this, we have, for this, we have developed a tool, a methodology for such reporting, which is based on Russian regulation documents and international regulation documents such as Greenhouse Gases Protocol, such as standard series of IPCC, and as I said, the relevant Russian documents, which generally copy and translate the international ones. And starting 1st of September, so just recent, in the country has started the national experiment in Sakhalin. This is, I believe you may know, this is the far east island of Russia, which has, according to which, by the end of 2025, this region has to become carbon neutral. And in this region, almost all the companies have to report on their emission of carbon. So, in order to become neutral, of course, you have to decrease your emission, but once this becomes impossible, you might introduce some climatic projects. So we have in Russia a methodology for realization of such climatic projects. And in this case, it would include a set of specific activities that have to be done. So in our case, and according to IPCC, according to GHG, once we want to do the climate project, before implementing the project, we have to create a set of reporting documents, technical documents, that would explicitly describe the climate project. After we have made this, we have to validate this documentation. So the validation of such documentation means that expert body approves that the calculations and the estimations and assumptions made in this technical document for climatic project are correct, and that there will be no extra impact of this climate project on other regions among the area of impact of climate project. This is extremely important. And once this has been approved, the climate project may be implemented. Then it takes up to 1 year or relevant time needed for the project implementation. And once it's been implemented and some results have been obtained, they have to be measured. So we need to have the monitoring system. And being measured, they have to be assessed. So the assessment procedure is called verification. And this is a second step of third step of climate project implementation. Again, the documentation for verification has to be prepared, and proceed for verification to the legal body. Then the legal body checks that the documentation and the measurements are correct, and the calculation of carbon units obtained are also correct. And only after this, these carbon units can be approved and can be transferred to the bourse. And then they can run in the market. So we are here. We have done already some climate projects verification. We have obtained some initial expertise, and we have proved the basic principles of such work, such as objectivity, ability to prove the results, proper documentation, and conservative and the independence from the customer or whoever else. So this would be for the presentation. Once again, I will be very glad if we will be able to establish a neat collaboration with other bodies in your countries and be able to do the vice versa validation and verification of climate projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ivanov. Bauman University is a very respected old university in Russia, so they take their work very seriously, and you can trust what they do. So now we move to our colleague from Peru, Dr. Alfredo Estrada. He's the director of the Sustainability Center, University of Lima. He will present us a report on the University of Lima's experience on progressive solutions for the environmental, titled The University of Lima Experience of Progressive Solutions for the Environment. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Could you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. I want to share my presentation. Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. I think it is important to share all the experiences that the Universidad de Lima has been gaining to reduce the problem caused by the climate change and help to the future of our environment. There are very big challenges which can only be faced through the teamwork and good and successful practices. The mission and vision of Universidad de Lima are based on the formation of creative leaders, professionals with a sense of citizen and committed to building a better world. Here we can see some images of our campus, whose buildings are LEED certified, which guarantees the environmental impact of our infrastructure. This presentation aims some of our successful experiences of the contribution to the environmental responsibility that academia ought to have with the planet. We will talk about our recent research and different projects with businesses and academic impact. In this research, we reflect on the circular economy as a whole. This requires the training of people with an interdisciplinary approach to improve the quality of life of society and enterprise. There is a dual approach of the role of academia in the circular economy. On one side, the internal management level, and on the other side, and the management with the community level. Today, we need to look at the catapult approach to link knowledge with innovation to promote and training that helps with the transition to an economy that is more responsible with the planet. In the research, factor for the implementation of circular economy in firms in COVID-19 times, the case of Peru, it was possible to determine what would drive Peruvian companies to implement circular economy practices in their businesses during the health emergency. In this study, we worked with 71 companies. Besides, the study was based on the theory of planet behavior. The results were very interesting since it was identified that due to the pandemic effect, the intention of the companies to use circular economy in their businesses was seen as a positive influence. It impacted in their decision and their integral management. And we are very interested in replicating this study in other countries. Several challenges have been identified in the implementation of circular economy in different sectors.
Sir, we cannot hear you. Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, could you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for a minute. So we hear you now.
Okay, I'm really sorry. Okay, I will continue. And the Universidad de Lima contributes, strengthen the collaboration with governmental and non-governmental organizations. We also contribute to the creation of the standards and technical norms of circular economy practices in companies and industries, supporting the National Institute of Quality of Peru and the United Nations Industrial Development Organization here in Peru, as well as municipalities of various cities in our countries. Likewise, in our line of action called Sustainable Campus, our carbon footprints measurement project allow us to work of strategies to mitigate the production of CO2 and become a carbon neutral campus. We have identified the transportation in the largest generation of CO2, so our objective is to generate more responsible mobility and transportation strategies. This certification that you can see below the present slide is being worked with the competent governmental bodies here in Peru. This is directly related to the environmental management system that we have in the campus and the development of sustainable infrastructure that we have. We are currently participating in the International Erasmus Project Plus Change the Climate, assuring the quality of environmental strategies in Latin American higher education, from which we have received an audit on environmental management. For this project, more than 60 students have participated as members of the environmental volunteering and this represents a successful experience. It has contributed to have around 70% of progress in the implementation of the EMS. As for development of environmental impact projects with the business sector, we work directly with supply market and small entrepreneurs to train them and turn them into companies and circular markets. We are helping right now in the university with all the 12 undergrad programs that we have. We are helping with the transformation of Peruvian companies to convert their management model with an impact on society and the environment within the framework of the national regulation of companies of collective benefit and insurance. In this sense, we are providing support to enterprise, companies, and corporations in the textile and service sector to develop business model and industrial activities that contribute to environmental sustainability. Finally, we consider that the university's role is no longer only the generation of knowledge and its transfer. Within the role of the university is to impact with knowledge in the most urgent issues that society has, such as environmental degradation. This is an issue that involves everyone, so the Quintuple LX approach is the key to achieve it. And it needs to be based on an environment of institutional trust, which is a great challenge for development economies. That is why all these issues presented are the result of a continuous learning process, which is achieved with a commitment for all the instances of any academic organization. This is all for my side. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Estrada. Very interesting to hear those things from you, because we at Far Eastern University, all next year, we will examine our campus. We will do Scope 1, Scope 2 analysis, and we will try to, and we will join UN program of university campuses Race to Zero. We have a big development project so to speak, campus part 2 in the process, and we will try to build it according to all the ESG sustainable practices. We would like to discuss with you this later and keep the connection lines open. Thank you very much. So next, I'd like to, for the Chinese perspective on the university, I gladly invite Dr. Xin Tintin, Head of International Cooperation Division, Chinese Academy of Arts. The title of her report is The Modern Environmental Crisis in China and Measures to Counter It. Welcome.
Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Да, здравствуйте.
Good morning.
Да, good morning, good morning. Так, здравствуйте, меня зовут Цин Тин.
My name is Tintin. Цин Tintin.
Да, да, Цин
Yes.
это моя фамилия, а Тин это мое имя.
Цин is my family name and Tintin is my first name.
Да, все правда.
Yes, that's
Так,
true.
и большой привет из Пекина. Я
I'm
работаю
sending my best regards from Beijing. I'm working at the Department of International Cooperation of Chinese Academy of Arts.
И тема моего
And
сегодняшнего
the topic
доклада
of my presentation
современный экологический
is
кризис
the modern
в Китае,
environmental
меры
crisis in China
противоречия.
and measures to tackle this.
Ага, и сегодня я буду
I'm-
выступать на русском
I'm
языке.
going to deliver my presentation in Russian.
Ага. Давай начнем уже.
Let's start.
Типа эксплуатации природных ресурсов,
The type of exploitation of
присущих
natural resources inherent in modern humanity
присущих современному человечеству, исчерпает
is
свои
exhausting its
возможности.
possibilities.
В этой
In
ситуации
this
есть
situation, there are
ключевые
certain key
точки на
points on the
планете,
planet,
от судьбы которых
and a lot
зависит
depends
очень
on
многое.
their fate.
И одно из них
One such key
является
point
современный
is
Китай.
modern China.
Загрязнение окружающей
Environmental
среды
pollution
и
and
экологическая
environmental
безопасность
security is a very difficult problem in China,
весьма сложная проблема загрязнения окружающей среды и экологической
as its economic
для Китая. Итак, чьи
As-
экономическое развитие и
as its
связанные
economic
с ними
development and
проблемы
related environmental problems
затрагивают
affect the
жизненно
vital
важные
interests of many
интересы многих
countries.
стран. Можно
And it
также
is true to
утверждать,
say
что
that solving the problems
решение Китаем
of
проблем,
China's environmental
связанных
crisis
с
is
экономическим
relevant to
кризисом,
survival
имеет
of
отношение
man as
к выживанию
species.
человека как вида. Такие явления, как смог,
Phenomena such as smog, thunderstorm,
загрязнение рек,
river pollution, soil pollution, coastal water pollution, groundwater pollution, depletion of vegetation cover, reduction of wetlands,
сокращение биологического разнообразия,
reduction of biodiversity,
часто
frequent occurrence
происходящие
of natural
причинения
disasters of
бедствия
various
разных категорий,
type, further increase in the number of cases of multiple infectious diseases,
и дальнейшее увеличение числа случаев множественных инфекционных заболеваний и рака.
oncological diseases such as cancer. All
Требуется
this require an integrated
комплексного
approach to
подхода.
their solution.
И очевидно, что такой
Obviously,
подход
such an integrated
не может
approach cannot
быть
emerge
полноценно
once in a
разработано
full-fledged version.
одновременно. И оно является
It can only
результатом
be the result of many years of efforts done by the authorities and the society to find optimal solutions
в этой области.
and action in this area.
И, в общем, впервые представление о строительстве
The first-
и научное развитие экологические культуры
The first ideas to how to implement these strategies
да, уже была брана на докладе на 17-м
was
съезде
done at
Коммунистической
the
партии Китая
17th Congress of the Communist Party of China in 2007.
Да, в 2007 году. И 18-й съезд
And the 18th
Коммунистической
Congress
партии
of the Communist
Китая
Party of
в
China in
2012 году внес
2012
в текст
uh,
устав партии
inserted
поражения
into the text of the party charter the provision for
о строительстве
building
экологических
an ecological
и стратегию
culture
развития
and
пятой
the
войны.
5-in-1 development strategy. The
Стратегия
so-called
развития пятой
5-in-1
войны
development
имеет
strategy has a
цель
goal of
построения к 2020 году
of creating a
Китайской
moderately
Народной
prosperous
Республики
society in
строение
the People's
зажиточного
Republic
общества.
of China by 2020.
В основу достижения пороженным 5
It consists of 5
стратегических
interconnected
задач.
strategic goals.
И первый – обеспечить здоровье и
Ensure healthy
устойчивое
and
развитие
sustainable
экономики.
economic development,
Утвердить ВВП и
double
средний
GDP
доход
and
на
average
душу
income per
городского
capita
и
of
сельского
urban
населения
and rural
по сравнению
population compared
с
to
2010
2010.
годом. И второй
This
– непрерывно расширять
continuously expand
народность
people's
демократию.
democracy,
И третий – значительно
significantly increase the cultural potential of soft power. This is the third point. And the fourth important issue is comprehensively raise the standard of living of the peoples, achieve an important shift in the creation of resource-efficient, environmentally friendly society. As can be seen from this, in the situation of the current ecological crisis, Chinese society has clearly outlined a strategy for survival by changing itself in the direction of creating a system of resource conservation and attitude towards the environment. This can be called a movement towards the creation of an ecological culture. Environmental pollution and strategies for responding to the environmental crisis will be the next point in my presentation. There are 4 main strategies under this agenda. First is a deep understanding of the importance of creating ecological or environmental culture.
After more
than 30 years of intensive economic development in China, the accumulated problems of ecology and environment are becoming more and more obvious.
С развитием общества и непрерывным повышением уровня жизни людей и народной массы,
the standard of living is rising. Development of the society is taking more rapid pace. The masses are increasingly beginning to appreciate clean water, fresh air, safe food, and all the requirements for environmental cleanliness in all aspects of people's life are becoming more and more in demand.
При характеристике уровня жизни в обществе
when we define the level of the social of the life of the Chinese people,
постоянно
the
подчеркивается ценность
environmental
экологической
problems are
безопасности и
always
чистоты
an
окружающей
undeniable
среды.
part of an important issue for the
И
existence of
таким
people.
образом
And by thus,
экологические проблемы становятся уже
ecological
очень важным вопросом существования
problems
людей.
become an important
И китайский народ от желания
part of
добра
life. And the Chinese people are moving from the desire for warmth and safety to the value of environmental society as a whole.
переходит к ценности экологической безопасности, от стремления к выживанию,
From the desire for survival to the value of preserving of the environment.
к ценности сохранения природного баланса.
The environmental balance, keeping the environmental balance.
И проблемы загрязнения
The essence
окружающей
of
среды
ecological culture is very important.
изложены в первой части
Which
уже не находится своего
Uh,
кардинального решения в рамках
so
культуры
many
цивилизации.
of the current problems are require new approaches because we can't find the solutions in our modern culture and our technological civilization. So we need to change our worldview from that issue.
Итак, и второй – это правильное регулирование соотношения природной среды и экономической
Economic
производительности.
regulation of the production and other economic characteristics should be monitored and improved too.
Практика показала, что
The
развитие
practical
экономики
life demonstrated that the development of the economy in China,
без защиты окружающей среды
without
просто
taking into
невозможно.
consideration the protecting measures for the environmental situation, is impossible.
И развитие экономики определяет
The
уровень
development
жизни
of
людей.
economy defines the living standard of people.
А нормальная экономическая обстановка
The normal economic
является
situation
необходимейшим.
is the basic requirement for normal functioning of the society and providing the adequate living standards.
Проблемы экологии не могут быть решены
The
путем
problems,
отказа от экономического
environmental problems
развития.
cannot be solved for the sake of the refusal from economic development.
И поэтому
That's
основной
why
задачей
the
должно стать
main
такое
goal is
решение
to find
проблем,
such solutions in environmental area
которые
that will
предполагают взаимосвязи между
suggest
экономическим развитием
the dependency between the economic and how the balance between the economic development and
и защитой
and,
в области
and
окружающей
protection of the
охраны
environment.
окружающей среды. И третий – это
And the third
содержащий соблюдение норм
is a
права
proper regulation of
экологических
the natural environment law, rules and regulations.
Одновременно с вышесрочным для строительства экологической культуры
Simultaneously with the above for the fashioning of ecological culture,
необходимы правовые
we need
механизмы
to
реализации эффективности.
employ legal mechanisms to implement the efficiency of all our actions in the field of environmental protection.
Эффективность рынков, распределение ресурсов и
First of all, with regard to
правительства.
distribution of available resources and protection and creation of ecological protection of environment and creation of ecological culture.
И только взаимосвязь, и
And
только
only
возможностями
interdependence
законодательной
between
системы
the legal
можно
system,
обеспечить
smooth
надежную защиту
seamless work
строительства
with regard
экологической культуры.
with regard to creation of ecological culture is possible.
И управление процессами строительства
The management
экологической культуры
of and regulation of all the mechanisms involved in creation of environmental culture
с помощью норм
with the
законодательства
help of legislative norms
требует
require the
разработки
development of a whole range of
комплекса
assessments
оценок
and
и
methods
методов
for
аттестации,
attesting official bodies,
должностных лиц, разработки
the development of
механизмов
incentive and
поощрения и наказания,
punishment mechanisms,
чем в настоящее
which is
время и
what the
занимаются
People's Republic
органы
of China
власти
authorities
Китая.
are currently implementing.
И четвертое,
And the fourth
Создание
point I would like to
структуры
draw your attention to is the
экологической
creation
культуры
of
и
the structure
систем
of
экологической
ecological
безопасности.
culture and creation of a system of ecological safety.
И главными
The main
принципами
principle
этих
of these
институтов
social institutions
должны
should
стать
be the
направлены
focus on
на
achieving
достижение
environmental optimization,
экологической оптимизации, экологической
environmental
безопасности,
safety,
устойчивого развития общества
sustainable
в
development of
долгосрочной
society in the
перспективе.
long term.
И для
To achieve
достижения
these goals,
этих целей
modern
современное
Chinese
китайское
society must
общество
improve the process of
должно совершенствовать
developing an
процесс
appropriate legal
разработки
system,
соответствующей системы права,
raise the level of legal awareness of citizens,
и повысить уровни правосознания граждан,
strengthen the priority of environmental issues in public life,
укрепить приоритетность экологической проблематики в общественной жизни
and direct citizens to find the ways of economic growth that are consistent with environmental norms.
нацелить граждан на поиск способов экономического роста, сочетающихся с нормами экологии.
Okay?
Итак,
Okay, go ahead.
окей. И сейчас могу сделать вывод, что экологическая ситуация
First of
в
all,
современном
in the modern
Китае
China, the environmental
требует
situation
срочного
requires
комплексного
the
подхода для
comprehensive
ее решения.
approach to solve all the issues
И в таком
related
подходе,
to,
как
to
неразрывные
the
серые,
environmental safety. So
должны сочетаться политика,
the
экономика,
political approaches, economic
культура.
solutions, culture,
При этом усилия по координированию различных сфер
all
развития
these
государства
activities should go hand in hand,
должны
governed
быть
by
направлены
the
не только на
government
решение
of
проблемы
the People's
загрязнения
Republic of China,
окружающей среды
with focus,
и
with a
сколько
total
на
focus
создание
on
особой стратегии развития
not
общества,
only to solve the issues of environmental
и
protection,
которая не
but
позволит
to
этой проблеме вернуться
ensure
в итог.
sustainable economic growth with the with consideration of all environmental issues.
И именно только такой и
And
становится стратегией
only-
формирования экологической культуры в
Only
Китае.
this could be a successful way to solve and build to build and create environmental culture in China. That is
Управление процессами
the
строительства
management
экологической культуры
of creation of environmental
с помощью нормы
culture in China
законодательства
with the help and assistance of legislative mechanisms
осуществляется с учетом
involved
самых разных
is,
факторов внутриполитической
in China is done by taking into consideration various factors such as political ones,
правовой,
legal,
экономической и
economic,
социокультурной системы регулирования жизни
socio-cultural,
современного Китая.
and other mechanisms which regulate the modern life in China.
И спасибо большое. У
Thank
меня
you
пока
very
все.
much for your attention.
Thank you very much. We all know the importance that China puts to environmental issues. That's one of the topics we discussed with the new General Consuls to Russia from China, Ms. Piao Yanfan, and we all can appreciate the totality with which China approaches tackling those problems. We as Far Eastern University are developing contacts with China, working with a few universities and agencies in China, trying to build bridges so we can work together. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give word to Ms. Runa Ah, Associate Environmental Affairs Officer at UNICEF East and Northeast Asia Office, who will present the report on the topic Decarbonization, How to Make an Impact. The floor is yours.
Many thanks, Mr. Muslim. This is Rona here, and if I may request the presentation to be up. First of all, many thanks for inviting me to speak on this very important topic and then to join the conference. Really delighted to do so and share some of the work that UN SGAP is right now doing. So if I may, is the presentation up, if I may ask? Yeah, thank you so much. I guess due to the time constraints, without further ado, we could go directly to the topic of the decarbonization. And if we may go to the next slide, please. Thanks. And as probably we are all aware, based on the latest release of the IPCC Working Group 3 contributions to the AR6 report, the human activities cause greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise from 1990 to 2019. And currently, the human activities have already caused 1 degree global warming, compared with the pre-industrial level. And the global warming is likely to reach to 1.5 degrees between the year 2030 to 2052 if it continues to rise at the same current rate. So there is a significant part, as you could see on this figure. Of course, I'm not going to go into the details, but 33% of the emissions came from energy sectors primarily, followed by industry, offload sectors, transport, and buildings. And next slide, please. So based on the IPCC recommendations, basically, the world needs to limit the greenhouse emissions to the 1.5 degrees Celsius. So there is an urgent need for the world to raise the ambitions. Back in last year, the parties under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change at COP26 Glasgow, the parties adopted the Glasgow Climate Pact, which all of the parties recognize the urgent need to reduce the CO2 emissions by 45% by 2030 relative to the 2010 level. On top of that, there is a requirement to raise to the net zero around 2050. And on top of that, we also need the deep reductions in all the other greenhouse gas emissions as well. The countries under the UNFCCC have their own nationally determined contributions. And if we focus on the Asia-Pacific region, despite the constraints of the COVID-19 pandemic, 49 member states in the Asia-Pacific region have also submitted their nationally determined contributions. They've also updated the indices as well. However, the key message here is with the commitments under their indices and under their increased pledges for the carbon neutrality, we are still not on the track to deliver sufficient efforts or sufficient reductions by 2030 if our goal is to limit the global warming below 1.5 Celsius a degree. So as you could see on this figure, it analyzed the different scenarios. For example, the global or the Asia-Pacific business as usual, and the commitments of the countries under the indices or carbon neutralities. There is still a huge gap between what we committed and what the IPCC recommended the world to achieve. And then next slide, please. So if we really need to limit the global warming, then the world basically need the rapid and deep and sustained reductions in global greenhouse gas emissions. And decarbonization would be one of the pathways that the world needs to devote the efforts to. So on one hand, we have the carbon sources from energy sector, offload, transport, or buildings, etc. Those are the carbon sources that emitted the emissions into the atmosphere. And on the other hand, we have the natural carbon sinks, which could capture and store and absorb the emissions in the atmosphere. But right now, the capacity of the carbon sinks cannot really absorb all of the emissions in the atmosphere. So at the same time, we need to reduce the sources and then increase the natural sinks. But on top of that, of course, it needs to be enhanced and backed up by the capacity building of the national or institutional level and backed up by the strong climate finance or technology. Next slide, please. And to achieve the decarbonization, we have a lot of opportunities ahead for the countries to take actions as well. Of course, the first one, the sectoral decarbonization targeted at the reduction of the carbon sources. For example, the world is putting the efforts to shift away from fossil fuels investment and increase the share of the renewable energy, as well as developing the low carbon and resilient cities, and to promote the sustainable transportation through the public transport, etc. Secondly, the nature-based solutions is really to increase the carbon sinks through forestry, through sustainable agriculture and land management, blue carbon through ocean, and some of the really heatedly discussed blue bonds right now to really increase the sinks. As well as we have the natural biodiversity loss. So the conservation for the biodiversity is also of great importance to increase the carbon sinks as one of the solutions. And thirdly, of course, as I've mentioned, it all needs to be backed up by the strong climate finance and technology. The balance of the climate mitigation and adaptation will be right now is of high attention for the climate finance investment. And the finance right now, of course, under the UNFCCC, the countries committed to 100 billion per year USD dollars to be mobilized. However, the goal has yet to be achieved. But even going beyond that, we are still not there. It's nowhere near the fulfillment of the climate objectives. According to some of the studies conducted by the climate policy initiatives, the climate finance still need to be increased by 590% based on the current level if we want to achieve the 2030 climate objectives. And the mobilization from private sector for the climate finance is in huge demand. And of course, the technology development and transfer from the developed countries to the developing countries is, of course, playing a critically important role as well. But for this presentation, I'd like to also elaborate more on the regional and international cooperation, simply because if we narrow down into the Asia-Pacific region, this region plays a really critical role in the overall achievement of the Paris Agreement objectives or the climate objectives by 2030 or even by 2050 or the mid-century. So Asia-Pacific region, for example, we have nearly 60% of the world's total population, and we consume half of the global energy supplies. We have the world's top energy producers and consumers. So the region as a whole need rapid and deep reductions. A lot of the environmental challenges, including the climate change crisis, need the strengthened regional cooperation as well. Working for the UN SGAP East and Northeast Asia office, we have launched this Northeast Asian sub-regional program for the environmental cooperation. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this program, we call it for short NISBAC, we have 5 thematic areas presented here, namely air pollution, biodiversity, nature conservation, low carbon cities, marine protected areas, and desertification and land degradation. We have 6 member states, namely China, DPR, Korea, Japan, Mongolia, the Republic of Korea, and the Russian Federation. So this NISPAC is purely country-driven, and we receive the policy and operational guidance from our member states. After adopting the strategic plan up to 2025. Annually, we will have the senior officials meeting to receive such guidance and adoption of the work plan for the next year as well. So for example, 2 weeks later, we're going to have our senior official meeting, 25th meeting on the 20th to 21st of September. So during that meeting, we will hear the feedback from the member states who will give us the policy guidance on how to further strengthen the sub-regional environmental cooperation regime to tackle the 5 areas challenges. The next slide, please. So among the 5 thematic areas, I'd like to highlight, for example, air pollution, low carbon cities, and carbon neutrality goals for this discussion today. So the air pollution and climate change, of course, as we are already aware, they're closely interlinked with each other. The pathways to tackle air pollution would generate huge co-benefits to mitigating the climate change as well, because they share the same emissions sources, and some of the pathways will share the same solutions. So the Northeast Asia Clean Air Partnership was launched in 2018. It's purely science-based and policy-oriented partnership. We receive the guidance from the member states, of course, through the senior officials meeting. So the member states could also, on a voluntary basis, collaborate with each other to share their best experiences and the policies to tackle the air pollution through best available technologies. And for example, we set up the policy dialogues and technology forums for the member states to exchange their views on how to tackle the air pollution. In November this year, we will have the committee meeting on the environment and development at ministerial level. So the ministers, they will gather together to make declarations on the air pollution issue. So as the secretary, we look forward to the outcomes of that conference later this year in November as well. And in addition to this air pollution topics and the challenges that we devoted the ongoing work, we also focus on the development of the low carbon cities. And we set up the Northeast Asia Low Carbon City Platform to exchange the knowledge of the policies and approaches to developing the low carbon city and its resilience. And for example, the comparative studies on the low carbon cities in China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea was published. And as well as the Russian Federation funded the project of leveraging science, technology, and innovation for low carbon and resilient cities. We targeted analyzing the policies and status quo for some of the cities in the Russian Federation as well as Mongolia. So through those knowledge products and policy analysis, we exchange such with the member states to further enhance the low carbon cities activities. And this year, to engage wider stakeholder engagement and to strengthen the capacity building, we will have our second international forum of the low carbon cities in December this year, on the 6th to 8th December. So it will engage a wide range of stakeholders from private sector companies, CSOs, government, etc. And in addition to that, 39 member states in the Asia Pacific region have committed to the carbon neutrality goals. We've already conducted the side events alongside the 78th session of the UNESCAP last year to really share the ambitions and policy or the strategic plans to reach the carbon neutrality in this Asia Pacific region. And specifically this year, we are going to have our second forum on carbon neutrality targeting on 3 of the largest carbon emitters, China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea, to really see how those 3 countries could share experiences and their roadmaps and concrete activities or the actions to achieve the carbon neutralities. And if we could go into the next slide, please. And of course, noting the importance of the capacity building on top of finance, technology, and the regional cooperation, we would also need strong capacity building to support all countries to achieve their climate objectives. And of course, closely connected to the topic of this conference, the education of climate change plays critical roles for us. However, our peer UN agency UNESCO conducted a survey and a study last year. It shows that the countries are not really doing that well in terms of integrating the climate education into their national plans of sustainable development. The UNESCO actually reviewed 100 countries' national education frameworks, and only 53% of the national frameworks included their references to the climate change. So the remaining 47, they made no reference to the climate change. Even with the countries, they made the reference to the climate change into their national curriculum framework. As you could see, 40%, they made very minimal references. And among the regions, Latin America and the Caribbean, they are the only region that made moderate focus on the climate change into their national curriculum frameworks. So the UNESCO put forward a strategy and the sustainable development for 2030, and their aim is to get every school climate ready. So I think based on their study, they aim to advance the integration of the national education and sustainable development policies. And especially they want to focus on each country's initiatives because due to each country have their own circumstances. Plus, they will foster the intersectoral and multiple stakeholder partnerships through global platforms for the policymakers. And as peer UN agencies, we also look forward the UNESCO's Sustainable Development for 2030 strategy could be implemented and drive the transformational shift to contribute to the countries for achieving the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and happy for the further discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's great that we had this presentation at the end because it puts the whole thing in spectrum. We all agree that climate change is a very important issue. Within a decade, drinking water, clean water will be a problem. We already have climate migration. I think that within our lifetime, we will live in a different world. And all the things that our government would do is not enough. We talk about it, we do our little projects, but nothing changes really. We need to really tackle the problem on the ground. And for this, what we do today is very important. We need to talk about it. We need to know about each other. We need to set standards that we work on together. And universities must take proactive role in this. We must help governments and businesses work with climate, work with it, make it profitable, because goodwill ends when goodwill ends. And we need to develop new projects, new technology that will help them, that will make it profitable for them. So let's open the discussion. Let's talk about it. And if you have any questions, please.
Can I ask a question, please? If I don't know if Alfredo Estrada is still with us. Can I address a question to you, please?
Yes, I can hear it.
Yes, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. And as we have mentioned, as you have mentioned, the university was certified with the LEEDs standard. And you said that you have measured the carbon footprint of the university. The question is, have you already evaluated, estimated, or whatever, the carbon footprint of kind of a product footprint in the university? In the university, product is a student. So how many carbon units did you evaluate for education, the full-term education of one student? How much does it cost in carbon unit?
Oh my God, this is a very interesting question. How can I could tell you? Here in the university, we have administration and financial management department. So this issue is in charge of them. And my answer to you could be that the last year we started to the measure of our carbon footprint, and for sure this evaluation gonna take place this year or at the beginning of the 2023. But the University of Lima is a non-profit organization. So this means we have a kind of financial independence to try to manage all the financial resources and economic resources that we have to become the campus and a campus carbon neutral. But this is a big challenge we're gonna face the next year for sure.
Thank you. But I just think that having this conference in place and having these universities here, the Far Eastern University, Lima University, our university in Moscow, this could be a very interesting research, because no one, I think, has done this explicitly yet. And that could be a kind of research that we could do together.
Less students, less footprint.
No?
Yes, but this is a very interesting line of research, let me tell you. So why not we could start a research about the financial issues in the carbon footprint management in the universities around the world. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
If you don't mind, I would ask a question also to Runa A. If you
Sure,
I can.
sure.
Yeah? Just one more. Runa, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The question is with regards of your very broad and very interesting presentation, when you have mentioned that you are dealing in the international scope with China, Korea, North Korea, Russia, Mongolia, and other countries. So within this international network, did you develop any kind of framework for mutual recognition of carbon units?
Yes, thank you. I think at the international level, actually, the countries, they, like, more than 197 parties signed the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change. So under that UNFCCC framework, they have their own nationally determined contributions. So each country will deal with the climate change in their own way. But right now, based on the Sustainable Development Goals Progress Report, we could see, especially on the climate actions, the countries are off the track. There is the regression of the progress on the climate actions, unfortunately. So that's where the Asia-Pacific region is really targeting the climate action. Starting from next year, actually, we also have, because we are Economic and Social Commission for Asia-Pacific within the UN system, we will gather the head of the member states and their ministers next year in May 2023. And we target to have the topic solely on climate change actions and support. And this is the very first time after the COVID pandemic that the topic has been shifted from economic recovery and regional connectivity, for example, to purely focusing on the climate actions. And of course, within the UN SGAP, we have the sub-regional offices to really be the entry point to directly talk to the member states. And the sub-regional environmental program for the East and Northeast Asia, the NEASBAC, we tackle the five areas. So with that, the member states, through policy dialogues, through the senior officials meeting, they could gather together and then discuss their best practices and policies. And of course, there would be some divergence on some topics, and then we are the active platform for to deal with the challenges and then to reach the mutual area for them to collaborate further. But in this really overall UNFCCC scope, and then the nationally determined contributions with their carbon neutrality pledges, those are already defining the scope for the countries to move forward to achieve the climate objectives under the Paris Agreement. I hope that helps to answer your question over from my side.
Thank you very much.
Another question?
Okay, so if you don't mind, the very last one to Tintin. I don't know, should I ask it in English or in Russian? How would you prefer it in? Как мне задать вопрос, по-русски или по-английски?
Я думаю, по-русски.
Да, лучше по-русски.
По-русски.
In Russian or English? Better in English. We,
Профилю вы являетесь
as we learned from your profile, you are
И сейчас в России огромное внимание, и вот мы сейчас находимся в Дальневосточном экономическом форуме, огромное внимание уделяется обучению искусству. И мой вопрос, насколько, как вы думаете, насколько обучение искусством влияет на экологическую ответственность студентов? Насколько это важно?
Programs in art are influencing the environmental mentality and approaches of students. Is it important? What is the importance?
То есть важности... Извините, можно вот это еще задавать вопросы только на русском языке? Спасибо большое.
Как важно ли обучать искусству студентов, чтобы увеличить экологическую ответственность?
Искусство, да?
Искусство.
Искусство?
Да.
Ага. Какая-то связана, то есть это уже будет, это уже связано между искусством с экологией. Угу. Потому что такая-то. Я сейчас работаю в Китайской академии искусства, и у нас это студенты обучают вот это разные сферы в области искусства. У нас это есть разные направления. Если мы сейчас говорим о какая-то взаимосвязанной или общее между искусством и экологией. Я думаю, что здесь это можно обсуждать. Это тоже очень интересный и очень важный вопрос. Потому что если экология, потому что все вы знаете, что это в Китае сейчас уже есть проблемы экологии и окружающей среды, уже накоплены более чем за 30 лет интенсивного развития Китая. И сейчас действительно у нас это не очень хорошая экология, не прямо какая-то в других странах, но мы стараемся это сделать этого еще лучше и лучше. Если мы сейчас это живем вот это по сравнению бывшего вот это времена, мы сейчас, конечно, это уже живем лучше. Я это имею в виду, какая-то уже я это имею в виду, что какая-то уровень жизни. Если уровень жизни уже повысился, это значит, что люди уже могут определять больше времени, заниматься искусством. И тем более это разные науки, и они взаимосвязаны, вот это действуют друг на друга. И особенно когда вот это, я не могу сказать, что искусство определяет, влияет на экологию, но можно, например, сделать уже, мы можем это подумать уже на другое направление. Если искусство помогает сделать лучше экологии, например, дизайн направления, может быть, вот это еще другие направления, то есть помогает сделать еще лучше для того, чтобы получить лучше уровня жизни. То есть мы можем делать еще лучше для экологии. И экология, если у нас это уже в Китае сейчас, если у нас хорошая экология, и люди живут счастливо, и они без никакой проблемы, тогда можно определять больше времени, которое занимается искусством. То есть они взаимосвязаны. Да, влияет на друга. Да, спасибо большое, это мой ответ.
I'd like to add to that the main problem with climate is us, human beings. So if we read more, lower our consumption, watch less YouTube, use less electricity, use less clothes, and become more holistic in our approach to life, not ego, not things driven, things that we possess, then of course culture, arts are very important in that. So I think we had a good discussion. I think that's it for today. We ran out of time, so thank you all for joining. Let's keep communication channels open and work together for the better future. Thank you.
Thank you
Спасибо
very much for the
тоже.
invitation. It was a pleasure for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Спасибо большое всем. До свидания.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.